What is going on, GLG gamers? It is your boy GLG Ryan, and today I'm going to be bringing you a new video of my Kinemon deck. Now, I've been running this deck quite a lot recently, just because I used to play BP Kaido in the past, but it didn't really work out because he was not a meta and he wasn't really running well against a lot of other characters. Too many of his characters can get KO'd easily. So I started running Kinemon because he was much more of a rest character, had more versatility to his deck. So I've just enjoyed him for the past couple weeks that I've been playing him. Ran him on the sim for a bit, and I've now finally built this deck. So I'm here to show you what I've built and I think is a pretty good deck for green. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about green. So your green deck is your card advantage deck. So normally when you're running it, your goal is to have more cards than your opponent. It is also a huge rest deck. So a lot of blockers get taken out by this deck. So you're usually trying to aim for the leader if you can. But a lot of times you will have to take out big heavy hitters with these rest abilities. So this is your leader, Kinemon. If you have one or less characters on the board, you can play a Land of Wano character with 3 or higher for 1 less cost. So essentially, your Land of Wanos that are 6 drops become 5, your 8s become 7. It's really useful if you don't have that many characters on the board and it's later in the game and you need to get heavy hitters out. You can save a Dawn, which helps for defense as well as also assisting in offense for that turn for attack. But it's also very, very useful in the early game stages because that's when you can start doing a lot of combos with Rizos and Okikus and playing them for 2 drops. And that is huge when you go second because that gives you 4 Dawn, which allows you to play 2 characters right out the gate on your second turn. My first card that I have in my deck for a 1-drop is Toki. So Toki is a blocker. She's a 1-drop blocker, but she only becomes a blocker if you have Kazuki Oden on the field. You have 3 different forms of Kazuki Oden in this deck, you will see later. 2 of them being Yamato, 1 of them being Kazuki Oden himself. So she can come into play for those heavy hitters. She's very, very useful when you get to your 5-drop Oden your 5-drop Yamato, because you can protect him on the field and make sure he stays safe. So very useful for that. Very nice and later in late game when you need blockers on the field and she's in your hand. But an also convenient thing about her, she is a 1000 counter and a very good burn card as well. So there are cards in here that allow you to trash cards in your hand and then get some sort of counter out of it. So using her for that burn is really good. So I play her as a blocker pretty occasionally, mostly in late game. But to continue, you have your searchers. So Kazuki Momonosuke is a searcher, just like your Jewelry Bonnie. He allows you to rest a Dawn and rest him and allows you to search the deck for any Land of Wano card. I only run this one searcher in my deck because I'm looking for Land of Wano cards, especially when I'm playing him. And this combos really well at the beginning of the game with Kinemon's ability, because if you can get a Rizo and a Momonosuke in hand for your first hand, you're sitting pretty comfortably for if you go second, because you'll have 2 Dawn at the start of your turn. You can play that Rizo using Kinemon's ability. You can reduce his cost to 2, drop a Rizo on field, and then on your second turn, you can then play a Momonosuke, rest him, search the deck, get a new card, and then attack with your Rizo and draw a card due to Rizo's ability, which we'll talk about later. So very useful, good combos with him, and great to search the deck for your Yamato, your 5-drop Yamato. Very, very useful to have. So you will want to search with this guy as much as you can, and people will be targeting him. So, don't be too bent up on losing him when people try to swing at him, because he's going to be a heavy target, such as all searchers are. So moving on, we've got our... That was clean. So moving on, we got our Scratchman Appo. So his ability allows you to rest one of your opponent's Dawn if you give him a Dawn to attack with. And I guess that's useful in very specific situations. But his biggest use, if you saw it on the side here, you probably already glimpsed at it. He is a 2000 counter. You keep him in hand for those sketchy situations where they're swinging at you and you need a 7000 counter. He's good for that block. That's like his main focus. On top of that, he can be a trash card because there is cards in here that allow you to trash a card. I believe Don Krieg's in here, and if you trash a card, it does allow him to activate his ability. He's another one of those trash cards, just like Toki. So it's good just to have him on board. But moving on from him, we have our Killer is our first blocker. And he has the ability where if you give him a Dawn on block, if you have 3 characters on the board, you can draw a card. So again, it's card advantage for green. So you're trying to draw cards as much as you can, have a nice hand, be able to use more what you need. Killer's really good for that. He is a 2-drop blocker, so very useful in that case. But there are a lot of cards that do take out less than 3,000 points, so he can get KO'd every now and again. So it's nice to just be able to have him on board to be an attack target, really, because he is, much like any blocker, they're going to want to be taken out first. So it uses that ability on him rather than on one of your more important characters that come up that are also low cost, because the majority of this deck is a pretty low cost deck. After that, we got 2 Nekomamushis, basically Cat Viper. So I call him Cat Viper. What Cat Viper does is, on play, you rest one of your opponent's character for a cost of 3 or less. It's useful in very specific situations, but the problem with him is that just in this deck, you have cards that do that much better. The very next card coming up will show that you can do that for a much better cost, and it's just a better play overall. But he is a 1,000 counter, so good to have in hand to counter if need be, as well as, just like your Oppos and your Tokis, a good trash card too if needed. So always nice to have him just as the safety factor. Following up after that, we've got our Izo. So following up after Cat Viper, we got Izo. Izo, much like Cat Viper, does rest, but rests a 4 or less on play, and is also a 2,000 counter. So just overall, I would argue, even though she's a 3-drop, just a better card than Cat Viper over there. So this is why I think of Cat Viper as more of a trash card and as a counter card, because you do have better cards in hand for rest and for defense, such as Izo, and it only gets better from here. But it is a very useful card and very specific for a lot of situations, and comes in clutch for abilities like Odin's, where his on KO allows you to pull a card. I'll talk about that later, but just a very useful card, and you'll see him come into use a lot as we play the game. All right. Coming up next, we got our Raizo. So Raizo, like I said about Momonosuke, Raizo allows you to draw a card when attacking once per turn if there's 2 or more characters rested on the field. He is included in these 2 or more characters. So if there's 1 character rested and then you attack with him, that's 2 or more characters allowing you to draw a card. So he is a 3-drop 4K, so you give him 1 Dawn. He will be attacking your leader most likely, so he can hit for those heavy hitter swings for the life. Very important to have that on board, as well as to keep that card advantage in hand. Like I said about that Momonosuke combo, you use Raizo to combo with him. You play out Raizo on your first turn using Kinemon's ability, and then you get you get Momonosuke out on the board for your searcher. You search the deck, you rest Momonosuke, and then you rest Raizo and attack the leader. You're drawing a card, and you attack the leader again. You're getting 2 attacks in a turn and 2 cards. Very useful, very nice to keep that card advantage. That's all green really is about, is card advantage and resting, and Raizo's very convenient for that. So having him is very nice. After that, we've got our more Cat Vipers. These are the blocker versions, the Sulong version if you've watched the anime. These blockers essentially are just 3-drop 4K blockers. They're just simply blockers, but they are 3 drops, so very, very useful. And with Kinemon's ability, very nice to have him on board, because you can swing with him and then reactivate the blocker. So very useful, as you'll see later in the future. Not this Kinemon, but the attacking Kinemon that I'll get to later in the deck. But just like any base blocker, they're just simply there to, take any of those big attacks away. After that, we have our powerhouse of our deck. So this girl, people will target really quickly. This is Okiku. She is just simply the steam engine of this deck. You put her on board, and the idea is that you're trying to keep her on board as much as you can. They will try to kill this character as fast as you want. It'll be gone within a blink of an eye, because if you leave her on board, it's very dangerous for you. She allows you to basically give her a Dawn, and upon giving her a Dawn, she is now able to attack for 6K, but her ability allows you to rest an opponent of 5 or less. Now, a 5 or less rest is essentially most of the blockers in the game. It's damn near 8 out of 10 of the blockers in this game. So Very, very useful. Very, very nice to get those things out of the way. And if you have her on board for the final game, it's damn near wraps if they have any blockers, because she is just going to be able to swing straight through them, as well as all of your characters because of her. So she's very, very useful to have end game. Very useful to have in early game. People will try to kill her. Try to keep her alive if you can, but it's not that necessary because she does become, like most of these cards, just something to swing at rather than your leader. But if you can keep her alive, please do so, because like I said, a strong powerhouse. Moving on, we have our Yamato. Now, this is our first Yamato of 2. So this Yamato on play is a 4-drop, allows you to rest a 6 or less. Like I said, you're essentially with this deck resting 90% of the blockers in the game. There are some 7-drop blockers like Luffy that are really annoying, especially for this deck. But, you know, that's just very specific situations, and 9 times out of 10, you won't run into that. And if you do, well, it just sucks. So, regardless, Yamato here is a 4-drop 6K, which is a huge swinger. Also can rest a 6 or less, like I said, so most blockers are gone. Any big heavy hitters are also leaving the field. You can now swing at their back line for like any of their 7Ks and stuff like that to try and get them off the field so they don't have these huge heavy hitters swinging at you on the next turn. Then they gotta waste their Dawn to try and pull somebody back in. That's a 6-drop. Now they're wasting 6 Dawn to pull a 6-drop on. It's just like overall she becomes really good later in the game. Early game, you don't really see much of Yamato. Because you don't really want to be playing much of Yamato because nobody's going to be dropping a 6K in the beginning of the game. So unless you're playing a Kaido ramp, then maybe you will be seeing a 6K. But most of the time you will be just running into these like 3s, 2s early games. So Yamato, you save later. You have them on deck. Very, very useful then. Moving on, we have, getting to the last bits of it, we've got our X-Drakes. Now, X-Drakes are simply just in this deck because he combos well with rest cards. He allows you to KO a character of 4 or less. Very specific in situations. If you don't have Krieg in hand, you'll play him. If you do have Krieg in hand, don't even bother with playing him. Use him as a counter. If anything, if you have a Krieg and him in hand, trash him, play the Krieg, use his ability. But this guy can just be helpful for if you're facing somebody that is running like a Boa Hancock, or maybe they're running a Nico Robin, who is just the bane of existence when it comes to this deck because it allows you just to KO most of your characters based off her ability. So just very, very useful for most situations like that. But if you have a Dawn Krieg in hand, less useful because you might as well play him for 1 more Dawn. But we'll get to that later. Then we have more trash cards, really. These are the carrots. They can be very useful in very specific situations. With my deck, not super, because it allows you to activate 1 Dawn at the end of your turn. Now, that would be useful if I ran more counters, but I don't run enough counters in this deck to really utilize this character, so I utilize her for her 2,000 and for a trash card. If you couldn't tell by this deck, I do run a lot of different counters and a lot of different trash cards because I like to have the ability to counter out of things because I have a card advantage. So I'm going to have more cards in hand so I can trash more cards if need be. The idea there is just simply so that you can keep countering out of things and not wasting your life and not wasting the cards on field. So that is kind of the reason that you put these carrots in, because they do have that 2,000. But it does also allow you to set that Dawn as active at the end of a turn, which could come in useful, I guess, for one situation alone, and that would be if you did have Paradise Waterfall in hand, but that card we'll get to later as well. And then we have our only 1 card in here. This is the only one that's 1 and 1 alone that I run, and it is Yamato. The reason I run only 1 Yamato is because the minute this card steps on the field, it is just all sights are focused on this card all of a sudden. The enemy is going to do everything they can to take out this card. So 9 times out of 10, what's going to happen is it's just going to be basically a blocker in a sense, where they'll waste their attacks to try and swing at this card because of her abilities. Now, if you can somehow, if God is good and lets you swing, you're looking really comfortable for that game because she has a double attack as well as banish. So you kind of want to try to hit the leader for as much as you can. So just stack a Yamato and try and hit that leader. Because if you can banish 2 life, well, now they're not getting that card advantage on you with that life, and they're losing that 2 life. So you are now up 2 life in the game, as well as still have a card advantage due to this character's ability. But like I said, she will be targeted immediately, and that is when, if you remember the Tokis that I brought out in the beginning, that is when Tokis become really useful, because those are your 1-drop blockers that only become blockers when Yamato is on the field, who is also known as Kazuki Odin. So since she's known as Kazuki Odin, the Toki becomes a blocker. So very good combination there, good to have in hand, and good just to try to keep this card alive as much as you can. But people will waste cards just to try and kill this card off the board because it is a dangerous, dangerous card. But it does not stop there with the double attacks. As I move into my higher end cards, you start to see double attacks become a thing that just commonly happen. So Kinemon, this is my Kinemon card. On play, he's only really useful with Odin because on play allows you to play one of 3 or less of the 9 red scarabs. They cannot be played if you're running Kinemon because he is clearly not Kazuki Odin as a leader, so that ability does not work. However, his regular ability, his Dawn ×1 ability when attacking, allows you to reactivate one of your 9 red scarabs. So those would be your Cat Vipers, your Okikus. Izo could be reactivated. So essentially the idea behind that is once again, you're double attacking in a form. You're swinging twice. And you can swing twice at the leader if you want. You don't have to. You could swing once with a Cat Viper blocker, and then swing with this guy, and then reactivate your blocker, have your blocker reactivated, so now he's ready to block again for the next turn. So now you've gotten 3 attacks maybe on the board just from a blocker with it. So very useful for situations like that. And very nice for end game when you want to reactivate people and swing twice. So, and is also a 6k, so just heavy hitter as well. And now we get into our Dawn Kriegs. So Dawn Krieg, you give a Dawn and gains double attack. But the reason why I say he's much better than Drake is because his on play is that if you trash a card from your hand, you can KO up to 2 of your opponent's rested characters of a cost 4 or less. So it's essentially the same thing as Drake, just better, because it allows you to KO 2 rather than just 1 that are rested characters. And with a lot of these cards in combinations, such as Izos and Okikus, you can rest those 4 or less, and you can use this card to its maximum efficiency. As well as being a 6-drop 7k double attack with 1 Dawn. So now you're getting an 8k double attack. That's a pretty lethal card right there in the end game. And you'll see people be pretty scared of that one too, because most double attacks are pretty threatening on the field, and people will try to get them off the field as quickly as possible because double attacks can do a lot of hurt to your life if you let it swing. But moving on from there, we have our last 2 characters, which is Kazuki Odin. And Kazuki Odin, his main ability allows you to rest 3 Dawn and swing again, so you can set him as active once more. He is an 8-drop 8k, but a very convenient thing about him is that most people just use him as a first-time swing if people leave him on board after you play him. You'll have him active for your next turn. You swing with him. You do your rest 3. You swing again. People will start thinking of him more as a threat, and you leave him as rested because the idea is you want people to use that attack to swing at him once more, because then on KO, you can play one of your 3 or less type Wano cards from your deck. So you can search the whole deck and look for any one of your 3 or less Wano cards and play it right then and there. Now that comes in real useful if you have if you find that Izo in the deck and you drop them on the field and they may have like only 3 attacks in hand. Now they've used 1 to attack your Odin, and then you're resting an opponent's character and wasting another one of their attacks. Now they're down to 1 attack, and it's not looking good for that turn for theirs. So now they've essentially wasted 1 turn just to try to KO 1 character. So it's very useful to be a target, ideally. But if they leave him on the field, also very scary because he is an 8k and can be reactivated in the late game. So very, very useful for a heavy hitter. And for our final card, which is not a character, but is my only counter card in this deck, is my Paradise Waterfall. Now this card allows you to get 2,000 plus power during the battle that's going on, as well as set of characters active. So very straightforward. If somebody attacks your leader and they just miss your Okiku or something, they decide not to swing at your Okiku, or maybe they decide not to swing at a blocker for some reason, and they decide to swing at your leader, they've rested your blocker, you can counter out of it and then reactivate that blocker, so now the blocker comes back into play. Or maybe you reactivate your Okiku, put them as a safety because now they're inactive, so they can't be attacked. Just good good abilities like that overall. So very, very useful, but I only run one of them because it's very specific and doesn't really help out the deck a whole lot when it comes to the trash cards that I have. So that, as a whole, is my green Kinemon deck. I love running it. I think it's super fun. It has a lot of versatility to it, and I will be playing a game with it, and you'll get to see that firsthand. I will be going against GLG Dan, and you'll get to see me run his either Eustace Captain Kid deck or his Trafalgar Law deck. Hopefully I take a W. I guess we'll find out. And just stay tuned to see that happen. All right, so I'm gonna be covering basically my gameplay, what it looks like, what's going on here for my deck profile. So for Kinemon, very fast turbo deck. You really want to maximize like getting those cards out early because you can 2-drop 3 drops. So very, very useful. Very nice to go second. That is the best idea, is you go second. And in this game, I do actually end up going second. You will see on the board I do have 2 rested Dom because I forgot to put them back in my deck, but I'll do that later. It kind of just starts out, we're just splitting the cards. I do take my first hand and I mulligan it because I looked at it. It didn't really show the camera too well, but it just was not very good. I didn't get any searchers. Didn't really, I think got a few blockers in there, like 2 blockers, no searchers. Just stuff that I really didn't want right out the gate. So, oh, it looks like I'm going first on this deck. So GOG Dan wanted me to play first, so I could play on the odd curve, which is not super favorable for my deck, unless of course you do have the Raizo. Okay, I do have a Raizo. I run him first for the 2-drop, and if I have a Momonosuke, that would be perfect to play as the combo here for the next drop. So the idea is that, you know, drop 2 more Dawn on the field, you play Momonosuke, you rest it, you get the card, you look at the 5 cards, you check it out, and you pick the card that you want, and then you play your Raizo, attack with him, draw a card, and you get a free card right out the gate from your Raizo. So the best idea is to try to get that Raizo as quickly as you can out, so you can start using him for like his rested abilities and get those cards, because you're trying to have that card advantage with green. I am playing a Captain Eustace Kid who is also green, so he's also trying to manipulate the hand as well as just have card advantage. So looks like the first character I played actually was a Kinemon. He has the ability to let me reactivate a green card after I've attacked with him, so I can attack with Raizo. I believe what I do is I'll attack with Raizo, I'll then attack with Kinemon, and then I'll attack with Raizo again and be able to use his ability, because I can now attack with him twice and maximize his ability. So very useful for that situation. Really good play by me. And we'll see that as it comes up. He does have a Gang Beige, and it looks like I can't see that one very well. But Gang Beige is on the field, Usopp's on the field. Oh, that's a Nami, it's on the field. He did swing at my leader. I think I took, I'm now at 3 life. He is at 4, it looks like. So just the idea here is just to start turboing out some cards, because I'm now at 7 Dawn. So I can't be using his ability anymore because I do have 2 Land of Wano on the board right now. So now that I'm at 7 Dawn, it's going to be just kind of getting those attacks out, getting some more cards on the field, trying to maximize my characters on the board so that I can have a stronger hold over the board. Because again, you just really want to have a good card advantage as a whole. Looks like I swing with Raizo for, seems like 7k at the Nami, I believe. And then Dan decides to trash the Nami, and then I swing with 1 Dawn, so for 7k at Captain Eustace Kid, which allows me to reactivate my Raizo. And now I'm going to swing with Raizo again for another 7k. That's 3 7k attacks, which is just crazy useful. He's having to burn a lot of cards to deal with this. Burn some life as well. And then on top of that, I do get to draw a card. So I get like the max out of that. And now I can probably play maybe a blocker, maybe I'll play an Okiku because I do still have 3 Dawn left, but I pass. So likely I do have maybe a Paradise Waterfall in my hand. I do not tend to show the board my hand. I am recording this a few days after we recorded this video, so I am trying to remember exactly how I played this. It looks like I play an Okiku. Actually, I rested 3 Dawn and I played an Okiku. Oh, I do show my hand. I have 2 Scratch Manapos, 2 Yamatos. I do have Paradise Waterfall in the hand. It looks like a very clean hand overall. I got some 2,000 counters in there. I got Yamatos in there. So I got my 6 drop, my 4 drop, 6k with the 6 rest ability. So really, really good. Okiku's now on the field, meaning that we are going to be able to rest a 5 or less on attack with her. So, you know, just attack leader, rest somebody else. So rest that gang badge, attack your leader. And then I just Paradise Waterfall, which means now I've given him 2,000. I've reactivated my Kinemon, so I can now swing again with him later. You do have to be cautious when playing green decks because a lot of them do run Punk Gibson. And Punk Gibson essentially gives your character 4,000 as well as resting another character on the board, one of your characters. So very scary for you if you're attacking and it's getting later in the game and you need to have those blockers up. You want to make sure you're thinking about attacking more because you don't want to just overextend and attack and then get Punk Gibson and rest a character, lose a blocker, and now you're losing that blocker. But starting out this part here, we do have Okiku and Kinemon on the board, meaning that I can now rest as well as swing for 7k again if I want to, and then swing again with a Kinemon, but it looks like instead I play my Kazuki Odin, which is just arguably better, and then I will, I think, swing with my Kinemon. Yep, I swing with my Kinemon, and I leave everybody active. Now the idea there is that I'm trying to keep all my boards active right now, because I want to be able to use all of the attacks that I can on this next turn. So that means double attack with Kazuki Odin, double attack with Okiku, and then my single attack with Kinemon, which allows my double attack with Okiku. So I just pointed that out. You got 2, 2, 1, 1. So that's a total of 6 attacks on the next turn. He does have 2 blockers on the field. It's good, but technically, if you think about it, he really only has 1 blocker on the field because I swing with my Okiku for 7, I rest it, and then I can just swing with my Odin if I want to, or I can swing with my Kinemon. It just depends on how I want to manipulate my Dawn and really go about maximizing the amount of damage I'm about to do to his Eustace Kid. I would like to preface by saying the game that we played before this was deleted on accident. Didn't completely record the whole thing, so we didn't get to watch it, but you would have seen the best play I ever had with my Kinemon deck. I did 5-0 GLG Dan, so just overall best game I've ever had. But sadly, that is not the one I get to show today, but it still turns out pretty good for me in the end, but you'll see how I play as we go through. Looks like he swings at my Kinemon, I take it, I eat it up, just gives me more cards in hand. I have 2 life, I have a lot of attacks coming. He does have 2 Frankies on board, an Usopp and 2 Beiges, meaning that he does have a lot of rest potential here, but we are both running green, meaning we both have a lot of rest potential. So does have rest potential for him, I mean attack potential. So he has 2 7Ks on the board, which means, you know, just heavy hits. It looks like I start by swinging with my Odin. I think the idea here is to bait out a blocker, exactly like I did, and then I give some to Okiku. And I give some to Okiku, I swing and I rest his other blocker, and I swing at the Eustace Kid, and he pulls the card. And then I swing with my Kinemon for, it looks like 8 at the Captain Eustace Kid, which allows me to reactivate Okiku. He does have I think he has Paradise Waterfall in there, which allows him to reactivate one of his characters. He does get him up to 8k, it looks like, to try and keep him alive. And then I rest 3 Dawn, swing with my Odin, take away another life. And then I think if I do, I might pass on this turn. I do not remember. Nope, it looks like I swing with my Okiku once more. He does have a Scratchman Oppo in there, so he could just drop a 2000. But it looks like he pulls the life card. And then I swing for 6k with my Kinemon, and he Scratchman Oppo's out of it. So I did swing for game there, but at the same time I also took away 3 life. Now that is to say that he can drop 3 life right here if played correctly. However, I have a huge amount of cards in my hand right now. The card advantage isn't super strong. It's just because we're both playing green, so we both get a lot of cards in hand at a time. We will always have, the goal is if you're playing anybody else, especially your blacks, your purples, reds, does not matter. Green should most of the time try to hold card advantage. Without that, you're not optimally playing him. I'm guilty of that myself. I tend to get greedy and just start trashing cards rather than taking life and trying to add to my hand to, be able to maximize my rest potential and my attack potential. So he does take out my Okiku. I burn the Okiku. I'm completely fine with that. I'm okay with him taking away one of my attacks. But my Odin and my Kinemon, at least my Kinemon, I need to have on board. Because I need to max somebody out so that I can take out a blocker and then also swing for game. So the idea here is try to keep at least one of these guys alive, especially Odin. Odin would be a real good, strong guy to keep alive. He is an 8k swing, which means it's less Dawn I have to split between the 2 Kinemons. Instead, I could be splitting it between Kinemon and Odin and maxing out my Kinemon and my Odin to both the 10k realm. So he does swing again, it looks like, with his Captain Eustace Kid for 9 at my Kazuki Odin, but I Ezo burn and get a 2k counter, which allows to bring my Odin up to 10k. Captain Eustace Kid does allow you to rest 3 Dawn, trash card, and reset Captain Eustace Kid. A lot of green cards. If you haven't noticed, from my Kinemon, from my Odin, Krieg I run in this deck, Yamato I run in this deck. These are cards that do double attacks. Kinemon and Odin are like kind of pseudo double attacks in a way, where it's just like you have to reactivate them with an ability. So like they can double attack, but it's on a specific thing. Kinemon himself cannot, but he can cause other people to double attack. So the idea is just to try to use that as much as you can when you're playing, is trying to get those double attacks crossed on the leader so that you can try to maximize taking away that life. It looks like I was able to burn my way out of any of the lives that he was trying to take. The best move here is just to base swing with my Kinemon, which I do, just to see if I can take his life, and he has to burn, okay, so that means I reduced his cards in hand, so now I know that he has less in hand in terms of counters, so if I start to stack, it'll be more applicable. I 7k swing with my Kinemon. I still leave a lot of room for my Odin to swing, so he used the blocker. I then get a 13k swing, it looks like, on his Captain Eustace Kid. I restand him and 13k swing one more time, and it looks like that is going to be game. I win with 2 life advantage. Just the best part of that whole video is just the idea of just keeping that, advantage in hand, because that'll keep you on in a better realm than the other person, especially when you're running green. It's very important. And getting those double attackers out on the board as fast as you can. Trying to keep them alive is important, but don't waste all your resources doing so. That card advantage in hand is the #1 thing. The second #1 thing is getting that double attack that you can out. Resting cards is your third thing that you gotta be thinking about, trying to get all those blockers rested. Once you're done with all that, it should all wrap together well, like it did in this video, or like it did in my 5.0 that was in the previous video that got deleted. But regardless, thank you for watching today, and as always, like, comment, subscribe, share with a friend.
Hurry, hurry,
GLG.
on the slide.